and welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection. I'm State Representative Mike Mrowicki from the Wyndham 4 District of Putney and Dummerston, and we are preparing for the 2024 legislative session. Joining me today is State Senator Wendy Harrison as we look ahead to 2024. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
You finished your first year?
Yes, I did.
And I feel like we did a lot of good work.
We did.
How was your first year in the Senate?
It was wonderful. It was very interesting. I learned a lot. I was surprised at how important the votes to override vetoes, how much those were. I felt them.
Yeah.
It was very serious.
Yeah.
To make those to take those votes.
I think there have been less than 10 veto overrides in the history of Vermont.
Yeah. No, but that was really important. I mean, the items that we got passed, the child care bill is huge.
Huge. And it's making a difference already.
That's what I've heard also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And it's unfortunate. You know, the governor said he supported child care, but he vetoed the bill. And he said he supported climate action, but he vetoed the bill. And I don't know that you can have it both ways.
No, and I think both of those bills are going to be so important to the economics of especially low-income people.
You bet.
And we heard in the Economic Development Committee where I serve, especially regarding the child care bill, that the employers themselves wanted the payroll tax because they calculated that they would make more because they would have employees than they would pay in the payroll tax. So they actually asked us to tax them.
My understanding is for the average Vermonter, that payroll tax is going to add up to about $5 per year.
Right.
I think that's a pretty good investment in our younger children.
Definitely.
You bet. So it felt like you were a great addition to our county caucus, and both you and Nader Hashim, our other senator, had some big shoes to fill.
We did, yes.
As Becca Ballant went off to Congress and Senator White retired. But I feel like you both have done great work. So thank you on behalf of the constituents of this county. We've got more work ahead of us, though.
Oh, yes.
And I think housing is one of those pieces that touches so many things. Workforce is hinged on housing. So many areas are unable to hire people because when they do, they can't find housing. What are some of the ideas that you're looking at?
Well, what we want to do is build on the work that we did last year. I'm sure you're familiar with S-100 that became Act 47.
The home bill.
The home bill. And
I sit next to Seth Bongart.
Oh, perfect.
In the floor of the House. And Seth deserves a lot of credit for all he did before the session.
Definitely.
To get that bill going.
And he's been hard at work this summer also, and has the NRB, the Natural Resources Board, the folks who govern Act 250, they've been working hard too. So there's at least 2 separate ideas for Act 250, proposals to change Act 250 coming up. So that'll be very interesting because they're pretty different from each other.
Yeah.
So we'll be looking at that. We're also looking, and something I'm very much in favor of, is finding a way for towns that have the capacity to do development review in a very thorough and thoughtful way, to do most of the review that's done through the Act 250 process. There would be some things that the state would still take care of. Like, for example, I think that river corridors should be handled by the state because rivers don't know political boundaries. And the impacts, as we saw this summer, of not planning well are just too devastating to be left to individual towns and too expensive. So we'll be looking at that. So the municipal delegation, the way that would work would be there's about 20 towns that would probably be eligible. they would be able to process their own system at the same time that Act 250 would
And
have
these
been.
are the larger towns in
Right, like
Vermont,
Brattleboro is
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
probably Rockingham
Yeah.
in our area. And that would speed the process for developers and the predictability, because folks who are putting money and time into a development want to have some sort of reasonable expectation about how long it's going to take and what it's going to cost.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the other day we heard from the local housing coalition,
Yes.
and one of the ideas was interesting to me was the idea to create a housing court.
Yes, and we're looking at that also.
Yeah.
And some other states have done that.
Yeah, and that would expedite.
It would expedite the appeals process.
Yeah.
Because the appeals, both of municipal decisions and Act 250 decisions, that's where the process can really get hung up. I mean, you know that
We
in
well
Putney.
know that.
Yes, I'm sorry
We well know
about your
that.
experience in Putney,
Oh,
which
it's
is
moving along. It's on track.
well, and the town itself has been tremendously
Yeah.
supportive of that housing, and that's what I keep reminding people.
You
It's
bet.
it's just a couple of individuals can hold up a whole process, and that's not fair.
Yeah, and that's what this would address.
Yes.
Yeah, so expedite that process. One of the things we did this year in regards to zoning is a pretty big thing, isn't it? A big change.
We did a lot of big changes. One that I would like to talk about a little bit is that what we changed was wherever there is single-family zoning, the owner of that property is now entitled to a duplex. And we did that for multiple reasons. The state of Maine did this. It was the one change that they made, and they're counting on it making a huge increase. By focusing on the single-family zoning, we're looking at something that has been a barrier for a lot of folks, because single-family zoning has been used as a way to exclude people.
The history is it goes back to racial discrimination.
Yes, and redlining.
Yeah.
So this is a way to address at least some of that, some of those back issues, but then also provide a way for people who are living in their homes now who may need some additional income, or they may want to provide another unit for a family member. They can do that on their own, and without their town being able to say, no, you can't do that. And I've talked to quite a few folks who are really happy to hear about that.
And accessory dwellings are a vital part of the mix. We need to do a lot, and that's
Right.
one of those things where here and there we can infill a piece of housing. Somebody can add an apartment. Somebody can create a duplex. And it's one of those things, it will all help, but it's one of those things that we want to continue to support, and there will continue to be grants for that too, I believe, up to $50,000.
Yes. Now there are multiple programs, because again here it's important to be careful about what we do, because so much of Vermont are beautiful old homes, and so those homes used to have 5-10 kids in them, and now they don't. So they're perfect for being turned into apartments. And that's actually what's happening where I live, is most of the homes on my street are now apartments, which is great, because we have a good mix of people of different backgrounds, and it changes. And so there's a program called the VHIP program. And that's, in our area, it's administered by Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust. And you can get loans and grants, $30,000 up to $50,000, to renovate a unit that is not up to code. And this is for private owners too.
Yep.
In the past, almost all of our funding went to the public nonprofits, which is really important, because they're the ones who provide permanent affordable housing, which is critical. But we recognize that we also need to support the private owners, and we can really make a dent. And these are very cost effective. The average cost year before last was in the $30,000 for the state to get a new unit, which is much less than the cost to build a new unit by scratch. Plus, you preserve the character of the community.
You bet.
Which is really valuable.
And that program has proved very popular, hasn't it?
It's super popular. Yeah, we run out of money all the time, as we did with the missing middle.
Yeah.
So that's on the table again this year for conversation, for consideration.
Yeah. Every bit helps.
Oh, it does. And honestly, that's the best way to do it. Rather than putting large new developments in the middle or just outside of the middle of towns, you do infill. They call it gentle infill.
Yep.
And that's really the best way to go, I think.
And that fits in with the smart growth philosophy.
It does. And you still can build big developments. It's just you can't build as many, and you need to be careful. Like in our area, the Winston Prouty property up on the hill, that could hold 350 units possibly.
Yep.
So that's just a tremendous asset that we really, really need to capitalize on.
Yeah. And as we move along, we're going to need that. The projections are that people are going to want to come to Vermont for various reasons, climate being one of them. And the other piece is we need people to come in and do the work that the Great Retirement has left jobs open in, whether it's physicians, educators, pharmacists, right on down the line. The Great Retirement is really showing up in shortages. And for people to come here, we need more housing.
Completely agree with you. I spoke with someone on the phone yesterday who moved here from Cambridge, Mass.
Yep. And
she and her husband are in Bellows Falls now, in an older home. They love it. They have one car. They love the walkability.
Yeah.
So
that
they're really happy.
Reminds me that transportation is another huge issue that we're confronting here. And what are the kinds of things that you've looked at? Because your work in municipal government has touched a lot of things, but transportation is one of them. So what kind of suggestions do you have?
Transportation, I think, it's key to everything. It's key to climate change, or to avoiding climate change.
Climate action.
Or minimizing it. 40% of our emissions are from is from transportation, primarily automobiles. So getting folks to switch to electric automobiles is key. Getting folks to have one less automobile than they have is important, and that's where the walkability comes in and the functioning of public transit. And public transit really can work in Vermont with the way that our communities have developed as nodes of development. Like, for example, there's a bus between Brattleboro and Bellows Falls where when you ride that bus, it's the 53, you can really see the pattern of development. And it works to have transit. We don't need sprawl.
And right now, I think there's only 2 runs a day, though, back and forth. Is that true?
There's 4, but we definitely need more.
Yeah.
It doesn't run long enough in the evening.
Yeah. So do we need more buses?
Well, we really need more drivers, and there are folks there to drive, but we need to be able to pay them.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So funding is always the issue, and people are the most expensive part.
Is there federal money for that?
The federal government subsidizes it already. Yeah. I think about 60 to 70% of our transit expenses are from the federal government.
So it's not just the Vermont taxpayers.
Oh, not at all. No, and Vermont actually, as you know, does very well in terms of what we send versus what we receive.
Yeah. Now, transportation encompasses a lot of things besides electric cars. And when you say public transportation, what are the other kinds of things besides buses what kind of ideas are out there?
Well, there's microtransit, which is great.
That?
Microtransit is bus service on demand when it's not a medical
so you
trip.
call up.
You call up, or you do it online.
Okay.
You normally need to do it a day ahead.
Yeah.
But they'll pick you up at a place that you specify and take you to a different place. And right now it's free.
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
We don't have microtransit yet in Brattleboro. We're looking at that actually.
Yeah.
It can really be a good way to get folks to businesses. If the schedule, the span of service, when the service begins and ends, because it's not going to be 24-hour, if that can be late enough, then it could be good for the businesses who need late night workers, because we have a lot of second shift, third shift businesses, and they need workers. So that's part of that plan.
Yeah.
And connect to Amtrak too, because Amtrak is just a huge benefit. Many people actually move here because they know they can go places on the train.
Now, there used to be what we would call now light rail, commuter rail. I remember years ago talking to retired Senator Bob Gannett, who grew up in Putney, and he said he used to take the train from Putney to Brattleboro High School.
Oh, wow. I've heard about the trains that are in the town. Like there were trolleys.
Yeah. So is that an option?
Oh, gosh. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
It would look different now, but anything is an option, really.
Yeah.
I mean, towns can be creative.
Yeah.
Londonderry is actually doing really good things with transit, and it's not related to the official transit.
Yep.
They've set up a community-based organization that helps people. You can call and say where you need to go. It can be medical, it could be not medical, and they will do their best to get you there. It's really, really impressive.
Yeah, well, good for them.
Yes.
And they're doing some things for housing as well.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think their hand has been forced with the way they got hit with the flood this summer.
I think so, but I think the transit part was that was already in place.
Okay,
So that was something that the community, they saw a need. It started out in healthcare, but they took it beyond.
Yeah.
No, they should be very proud.
Now, as a senator, you have 2 formal committees.
Yes.
What are you looking forward to in the next session with each of those?
My morning committee is economic development and housing, and so that's what we've been talking about is housing. And economic development, I really like the workforce conversations and the things that we're able to do. Last year, we did a bill that provided for cancellation of part of your student loan if you were a Vermont college student who graduated and who stayed in the state to work for a certain number of years, then part of your student loan would be forgiven. And I love that one because it's a twofer, because we're getting people who know what Vermont is like and they're staying here, plus we're reducing their debt burden. So we help them and we help the state. So
how would
those
people
are my
access
favorite.
that program?
VSAC.
VSAC.
Yes, and they're a great, they're obviously in touch with the folks. They have the connections because that's where the people get the loans from.
Okay.
But yes, they're the ones who have been advertising the program, which is great.
Now,
and so we'll be looking at more workforce.
Yeah. Where are the workers going to come from? Because we don't have them here in Vermont, right?
Right. And the whole country, I mean, it's really the demographics of our country and of Europe. People aren't having as many children as they used to.
Yeah.
That's really what's happened.
So where does immigration fit in with that?
Well, we have been very welcoming. Windham County has been very welcoming, and we have received, we have 120 maybe new members of our community, and each of the families has at least one person working.
Yeah.
They're in all different kinds of jobs. Generally, they're choosing to stay here, which is great because we're their landing location. And many of these landing locations, folks will leave, but we're finding that the people really, really enjoy being here, which is wonderful.
Yep.
So that's terrific, and you can really see it in the schools. Our schools are getting so much more diverse and just vibrant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's your morning committee.
Yes, and then my afternoon is the institutions committee. Which we will be talking about flood and flood damage. That's the committee that deals with the capital plan of the state. And so first we talk about how much money we have available. And that's based on a formula and input from the bond agencies, and a really good. It's really good to start out that way rather than starting with a wish list. Last year we actually did talk about dams, and these are the smaller dams that are harmful to rivers, not helpful.
Right.
And we have one person in the state who's in charge of those dams, and they need more. And he said last year they needed more. So now we really know that they need more. So we'll look at that. We'll look at corrections.
Yeah.
I have a lot of concern about our corrections facilities. People are not getting educated. People are not coming out of there better than when they came in.
Yeah.
So, and the whole corrections means not punitive. It means you help them. You give them education. You give them resources so that they can become just responsible and just have options when they get out. And that's not happening there.
Now, there was a group that just visited the main.
Yes.
Were you part of that group?
I visited it a few months ago.
Okay.
Yes. I was in one of the earlier groups.
And good ideas?
Oh, amazing ideas. Yes. They there's a lot of education. There's a lot of just good training. Their cafeteria has good training where folks learn how to cook, and they cook healthy food.
Yeah.
Very different from ours. The physical aspects are different. The women's center where it's to help you get out in a way that is helpful, because especially with women, what happens is their family has typically changed, especially if they have children. So they need some support when they go to their family, and it's different. It's helpful for them to come back and just have the night at the reentry center.
Yeah.
And they want to be at the reentry center, because then that's where they have the supports. They can talk to a counselor and then go back to their family re-energized and understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
So no, it's very impressive what they're doing.
Yeah. Now, there'll be plans this year, a little bit more concrete plans for the women's
facility.
center.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, we don't want anyone to be there who can, or be incarcerated who can be helped in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's a really important conversation to have.
Yep. Yeah. As we get closer to the session, are there bills that you're proposing outside of the scope of your committee?
Yes, as a matter of fact. So one bill I'm excited about is a bill to allow towns to go into apartments, and in cases where the landlord has not been taking care of the lead remediation, and we know that's happening, and children are being poisoned, that in those cases, the town could take care of the lead abatement themselves or through a contractor and bill the landlord. Yeah. I think that makes, and we have to do something. We can't just wait for the court process. And another bill that I'm excited about is stormwater utilities, that's a way to have a fair way to manage and pay for stormwater, because stormwater, as we know with flooding, the impacts of flooding are tremendously expensive. It's less expensive, although it still does cost, to mitigate. So have restored floodplains. For example, in Brattleboro, we have Melrose Terrace, and because of the work that was done there that took 10 years, the town of Brattleboro is much better protected from storms, because the buildings were removed and the land was 6 feet of dirt was removed, so that the water could spread out, slow down, and what happens when a flood carries like trees and stuff with it, that's a problem. So when you slow it down, the trees settle and you don't get the flooding downtown as much. So other towns need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And a stormwater utility would help fund that, would help pay for that. And you only pay into it if you generate stormwater. And folks who are exempt from property taxes would still be subject to stormwater payments if they do generate stormwater off of their property, because that's only fair.
Sure. And
because they make stormwater that we all have to contend with.
if there's town water or sewer, just like they pay for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or electric
Yeah.
bill.
It's a user it's a user fee.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's based on the quantity.
Yeah. Now, Vermont, because of that mitigation, we seem to have dodged big damage the way towns like Waterbury and Montpelier didn't this past summer with those heavy rains.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about, having that kind of mitigation around the other places?
Exactly. And we'll be talking about that probably in both of my committees. We'll be talking about that. So we know how to do stormwater mitigation. We know how to do restoration of floodplains. We just have to have the political courage and the money to do it.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll make something happen while the storm is still in their minds too, because it can be hard. Because Americans are just so optimistic. Once we get a year past, we don't always remember how awful it was.
Are there funds for that in the federal infrastructure bill?
For stormwater in particular, I'm sure there are. I don't know how much is there.
Now, we've only got a couple minutes left. This is a good time for people to get in touch before the session starts. What's the best way for constituents to get in touch with you?
They can write to me on my legislative email, which I'll just say it, or we'll.
Yeah, you can say it, and then they'll put it on the screen later.
Okay, perfect.
Too.
It's wharrison@leg.vermont.
leg.state.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
VT.
I'm new.
Yeah. .us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's on the legislative website too.
Right.
And probably you have your own.
And then I have a website, Wendy4 with the number 4 wyndhamvt.org.
Yeah.
And I actually answer my own phone. I surprised somebody yesterday.
Right. There's
because we don't have staff, but that's okay. It's good.
That's one of those jokes we hear. Could your staff handle this for me? Well, yeah, you're talking to your staff right now. Well, good. Well, thank you so much. Looking forward to another productive year. One of the things that I have found in my years is as we get started, we have plans, and then inevitably something may come up that nobody's thought about, and we're going to have to deal with that as well.
Right.
But we can do more than one thing, and I think especially as we work together, we'll get some more stuff done for Vermont, and as we move deeper into the 21st century.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
You bet. Well, thank you for your work, and thank you to BCTV once again for all the good work they're doing. I especially want to thank Cor Trowbridge. She is concluding a stellar career here at BCTV, where her work was really transformational for making BCTV the core of this community for media that it is. And we wish her well as she moves on and as the new people come on here. But we look forward to continuing working with BCTV as we head into the session and take their help to bring our work in Montpelier back here to Windham County. So this is Representative Mike Mrowicki. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.